What if I told you Angular finally solved change detection? Without zones, without subscriptions, and without boilerplate. Angular signals are one of the biggest shifts in Angular's architecture since RxJS. Whether you are new to Angular or a senior dev still mentally debugging expression changed after it has been checked error, this video will change how you write Angular apps forever. By the end, you will understand what are signals, how they work internally, when not to use them, advanced patterns used in real production apps. Let's start from the absolute basics. Let's discuss the problems we had without signals. Before signals, Angular relied on Zone.js, global change detection, RxJS everywhere, even when not needed, causing Angular problems like too many subscriptions, manual unsubscribe, hard to track re-renders, performance issues in large apps. Signals solve this by introducing fine-grained reactivity, that is, only rerun what actually changed. Now, what is a signal? A signal is a reactive value that Angular automatically tracks and reruns dependent code when it changes. It holds all types of values. Now, creating a signal is super simple. Let's go to the app.ts file in our component and we'll create a signal variable over here, right? But before that, I would like to have a component of my own, right? Of a counter component that we want to use, okay? So I'll create a component using the command ng generate then component, and let's name the component as counter. Okay, now our component is created, right? So we'll go into our component. We'll first map this component inside our app.html. Okay, so that is app counter over here. Okay, so I have mapped this component and I also have to import that component over here, right? So that is already imported by the editor. So I'll go to the counter and here I'll create one signal variable, right? So to create a signal variable, you just have to type in the name of your variable. So this is my variable, and along with that you have to assign a signal function to that, right? So this is how you create a signal, right? Now creating a signal needs an initial value, right? So already I wanted to create a count variable which holds a 0 value. So I'll create a signal with a value 0, right? Now this signal is created, right? Our signal count signal is created. Now if I want to read this value inside our template, so that is also super simple. I can just add a paragraph over here, right? So this is optional, so you can directly use the interpolation and use that count variable over here. But I want to use text that should be displayed before my counter current. I'll like to have the current count is and then the interpolation. Okay, so this is the property binding. Now to read a signal variable, you can just directly call the count over here, but you'll have to assign a parenthesis along with that, right? So this is how you read a signal, right? So now our signal is created and our signal is also read, right? So let's see how this is looking. Okay, so you see the current count is 0, that is being shown, right? The 0 is our initial value. Okay, so this is how the signal, you create a signal and you read a signal value, right? Now let's go and create another signal, right? So let's say I want to create a variable. Let's say this is another count. Now this is a normal variable, not a signal, right? So I'll just assign a normal value, a value 0 to it, right? Now whenever you create a signal, you can just know if that variable is a signal or not, right? So for that, what we can do, we'll implement on init over here, right? So once implemented, I'll implement the function as well. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll just console.log, and then to check whether a variable is signal or not, what we can do here is that there is a function which is signal, right? So this is the function that with which you can check whether the variable is signal or not, right? So within that variable, you can just pass the parameter as your the variable that which you want to check, right? So this is my count variable. So I want to check whether this count variable is signal or not, right? Let's say let's add the console log for the other variable that I have created is signal or not, and then the another variable, right, another counter that I have created the variable inside, right. Now let's go into our browser and let's open the DevTools, right. Here you can see the first count variable, which is this one. Okay, the count variable, this is a signal, so the console is printing as true, while the other one is not a signal, so that is printing as false. Okay, now let's say I want to update this signal, update the count variable, right. I want to assign new value to it, right. So to assign a new value to a signal, you have two options, set and update, right. Set is used whenever you want to assign a new value to a signal, right. So let's say I want to have a button over here. Let's create a button. Okay, now button is created. I'll just call the button as change, and when on the click of that button, okay, I'll just call a function from our component on change. Okay, so once this on change is called, that will be calling a function inside our component. Okay, so this function on the click of that button. Now I want to update this count variable. So to update a count variable, you can directly call the set function on this count, right. So let's say this dot count dot set, right. So this is the method that you can use to update a variable. Okay, so remember, when you want to assign a new value to a signal, then only you can use the set function. Okay, so this set function is used. Now let's go in our browser. So you see I have the button over here. When I click on change, the count variable is changed to 4, right. So this is how our signal is working. This is how you can update a signal. Okay, now if I want to have if I want to update this signal based on the previous value, right. For example, if I want to update the counter, okay, for example, if I want to increment the value, let's say I'll just add a button over here. Okay, and I'll call that button increment. Okay, so once the increment button is created, on the click of that, I'll call the function on increment. Okay, so once this function is called, what I'll do, I'll not assign a new value to that signal. Okay, because I want to increment the value of the count signal, right. So to increment the value of this count signal, I want to have the access to the previous value, right. So for that, when you want to update a signal based on your previous signal value, you can use the update function, right. So what we'll do, this dot count dot update. So this is the function that you should use always in order to change or in order to update the value of the signal, right. So update will have a function as a parameter, which will have the count, the current value. So let's say current value of the count. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to increment the current value, right. So to increment the current value, I'll just add 1 to that current value. Okay, so this is how you can increment, or this is how you can update a signal using the update function. Okay, so let's save that here. Okay, now let's go in our browser. So this is our increment button. So once I click on that, you see the count is increased based on the update function, right, the update function that we have created over here. Now let's talk about effects. Effects are functions where you want to track the changes of a signal. Use effects when something external needs to happen. For example, logging API calls based on a signal value, or tracking local storage changes. Let's see how effects works. For that, I'll create another component. We can use it here only directly, but everything at one place seems to be confusing. Okay, so I'll create a component named channel nggc and then the component name. Okay, so this is my channel component. Okay, so within the channel component, I'll create a signal variable over here. Okay, the variable which will hold an object. For example, remember, signal can hold any type of value, so we'll assign an object value to this signal. Okay, so I'll create the channel variable over here, and within that channel variable, I'll assign the signal with initial value as the name of the channel. Okay, so Frontend Forge. All right, and whether that is subscribed or not, right? With the value false. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel, now is your chance to make this variable as true. Okay, so once this channel is created, once this channel variable is created, I'll use this component.html, the channel.html, to read that channel signal. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll create a paragraph. Okay, so I'll add channel name with a, okay, now how will you read a signal who has an object value assigned, right? So what we'll do, we'll add a channel just like any other signal. I'll add the parenthesis over here, right? But I want to extract the name of it, right? So I can directly use the name over here, right? So this is how you can use, or you can extract the property of a signal who has a object assigned to it, right? So channel name is here, right? Then is subscribed, right? So this will be that whether the channel is subscribed or not, right? So channel dot is subscribed, right? So this is how you can read a signal who has the object as a value assigned to it, right? Now I have created the channel and I have created the channel signal and read its value, right? But I want to again map it with our HTML, right? So I'll comment the counter for now. Okay, and I'll use the app channel component. Okay, so once imported inside our app.ts file, I can directly go in our browser and see if that is working or not. Okay, so you see channel name is showing as Frontend Force and whether that is subscribed or not, right? So now if I want to update the value of this channel variable, right? For example, if I want to update the property is subscribe property of this channel variable, how can you do it, right? So for that, let's create a button over here. Okay, so I'll call that button as subscribe. Okay, and for that I'll add the click event property to call the on subscribe method that should be coming from our channel.ts file. Okay, that is our component. Okay, so on subscribe, now I want to update the value. Remember, I have already informed that you should always use update, right? Update function in order to update a signal, right? So what we'll do, we'll add this dot channel. Okay, then the update property, and we'll have the previous value of the channel. Okay, so I'll return an object, okay, with all the properties that is already have, all the property values that it already have, and the is subscribed as true because we are subscribing to that channel. Okay, so I'll add that is subscribed as true. Now once subscribed, I have this button over here. On the click of the subscribe, this will call this function on subscribe. So inside this on subscribe, the channel is subscribed property is updated. The value of this is subscribe property is updated. Now let's go in our browser. So we have this button subscribe. So once I click on that, you see that the value, the true, is being shown over here on the is subscribe paragraph, right? So this is how you can update a signal who has an object value assigned to it, right? Now we were talking about effects. So effects are basically used inside an injection context. So I'll just add a constructor over here, right? So once I have added the constructor, I'll use the effect. Okay, so effect needs a function. Okay, so I'll just pass a function over here. Okay, now inside the effect, how you can use the signal, you can directly call that signal variable or signal value inside that effect, and whenever that value changes, your effect will be called. Now let's see, I'm adding a console log. Okay, and I'm adding a template tutorial. Here I'm adding channel and then the value of that channel. Okay, the channel dot dot name. Okay, so this channel name is, then what we'll do, we'll say whether that channel is subscribed or not, right? So I'll do as now this dot channel dot is subscribed. So I'll just add a text that that channel is subscribed and that channel is not subscribed. Okay, so whenever any value, for example the name of that channel signal will be changed, then the effect will be called, or the subscribed property of that channel will be changed, then the effect will be called, right? So let's see, and our console is already open. So now you see, when I click on the subscribe button over here, the value is changed, right? The subscribe value is changed, and we have the console, right? Channel frontend 4 is subscribed, right? So because the value is already changed from our side because of the update function, right? Remember, effects will not be triggered if you have not updated their value properly. For example, if you are directly updating a value of that property, let's comment this out. Okay, I'll comment this one, and I'll go inside our on subscribe, and here I'll do this dot channel, and we have the access to the subscribed or not, right? So I'll assign directly value to it, right? So this will show whether that channel is subscribed inside the UI, but the effect won't run, right? Let's say I'm clicking on the subscribe, it is still showing here as subscribed as true, but the effect won't run because signals rely on immutability. Sometimes if you have two signal variables inside an effect and you only want to track the changes of any one, then you can use untracked, right? For example, I have this signal over here, right? For example, I have another signal, let's say count signal. Okay, count signal, and with value 0, and when let's say I'm clicking on the count, I'm updating the property of the count, this dot count dot update with previous value. Okay, and within that previous value I'll assign with that previous value of +1 to it, right? Now this previous value, this should be prev value. Okay, so I'm assigning a new value to that previous value and updating that count signal. Okay, let's uncomment that and comment this one. Okay, so I'll not now I will do console.log. Okay, and then I'll this dot count, right? So whenever any of these signal changes, our effect will be called, right? Now let's say I'll create another function, another button over here, right? And on the click of that, I'll just call a function change or change count. Okay, and I'll call that button as change count. Okay, and on the click of change count, inside the on change count function, what I'll do, I'll just update that count variable. Okay, so I'll use that change count function over here, and I'll just update that count variable. Now you see, on the click of on subscribe, I'm updating the channel signal, and on the click of change count, I'm updating the count signal. Okay, so I'm also having an effect inside our constructor with both the variables, right? Whenever the count change, then the effect will run, or whenever the channel signal is changed, then we'll have this console. Okay, so now let's go in our browser. So effects will run initially, right? So if you have written effect, right, then your effect will run at least one time, right? So now I'm not having a button over here because I haven't saved that. Okay, So once saved, I'll see the button change count over here, right? Now let's clear the console and I'll update the count value. For now, you see the effect is called, right? And if I am still clicking on the subscribe, and you see again the effect is called, right, with that updated value of the other signal, right, whatever value that we have updated. And if I again click on change count, the same effect will call, but this one will be still be consoled, because even though that is not changed, right, that will still be consoled. Now in that case, if you want to track the changes of a signal, and you don't want to track the changes of another signal which have been used inside your effect, then you can use the untracked function, right? Untracked function lets you untrack the signals, right? So I'll use the untrack over here, and here untracked, okay, and I'll just pass the signal to it, right? So now, even though my count variable will change, right, the effect won't run, right? So let's see. Now I'm changing the count value, right? Still you can see there is no console over here, even though I'm changing the count, right? Now if I click on subscribe, right, then the effect will run, and we'll have the updated value of the count along with the channel variable, right? That was all about part 1 of the video, signals, the complete guide. The next part of the video will see computer signals, read-only signals, and communication between components using signal inputs and signal outputs. And then finally, best practices to using signals in your application. See you in the next one.